So I realized today is actually a pretty special day in horror history. It's a pretty special day to me, and I know it's a very special day to fans all over of this movie in general and this movie franchise. I'll get into. Of course, that's what the episode is about. I will get into the ups and downs of this franchise in a little bit and as we go along, of course. But nonetheless, man, happy 28th anniversary to Children of the Corn 2: The Final Sacrifice. I think it was released a year prior in maybe the UK or somewhere like that. Don't quote me on that, but I know theatrically in the US it was released 28 years ago today on this day. Now, with that being said, Children of the Corn 2 is hands down, no question about it. My favorite movie in this entire series. Not my favorite sequel, none of that type of beat around the bush type of shit. This is my favorite film in the entire series. I'll get to why that is my favorite film. I don't want to spend too much time doing this intro, but it's funny that I had this outline already done almost a year ago, man. I want to say when I kind of got my feet wet with the podcast and shit, man. I had this mapped out for so long, man, and I just didn't get around to it because y'all know how I am, man. I'll set a specific date for a specific episode, specific topic, whatever the case may be, and I'll just end up, y'all know how my brain works, man. It's all over the place. I'll end up doing something completely different. But I just think it's good that today Children of Corn 2 is celebrating its 28th anniversary because it was a perfect segue into this episode right here. And I'm like, boom, I can, that's one stop shopping. I can bang this out while, giving the dues to my favorite entry in this franchise. Now, really quick about the Children of the Corn franchise. If you are savvy to this franchise, like I am, I kind of lost my way. They lost me as the movies went on. I'm not going to lie. I tried to stick with it as long as I can. I think I stuck with it up until Revelations. But after that, I saw a little bit of the remake that went straight to TV in 2009. We'll talk about that later on. But they fucking lost me after a while. Now, like I said, if you're savvy to this series the way I am, for the most part, there is little to no continuity here, man. This is not... every horror franchise can't be Saw. And I say that to say that Saw is probably the only horror franchise I've ever seen in my life where where 99% of that continuity is airtight, where it leaves no room for error. It leaves no room for you to question and be confused about what's going on as far as the story, as far as the characters. And that's very rare, man. Even my favorite, slasher series, Halloween, has like 4 different fucking timelines to it. So it's just like there's the continuity is there, but the timelines are all over the place, man. And same thing with Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. There's so many continuity errors, but Children of the Corn, I feel like with the exception of 1, 2, and 6, fuck a continuity timeline type of aspect of things. They are unapologetic with how they don't give a fuck about the previous movie having nothing to do with the movie that you're about to watch ahead of it. And I don't know, of course it's bad for me because I'm really big on storytelling and continuity and, reoccurring characters and reoccurring themes and stuff like that. And just, nostalgia from the previous movies. I'm big on that type of shit, but I don't know, maybe the upside of this series being all over the place is that you can probably watch any movie in the series, and not have seen the one before it. Or any other movie in the series. Like you can watch 5 and it's a complete standalone film. You don't have to, it has nothing to do with 4. It has nothing to do with 6. You can watch 6 as a standalone, but it kind of helps to go back and watch the first one since John Franklin comes back to play Isaac. And you do have another character, Nancy Allen's character, who comes back, but she was played by a different actress in the first movie. But there's a lot of continuity, like I said, in part 1, 2, and 6. But other than that, we're going to get down to the nitty gritty of this series, people. I'm gonna try. I promise you, I'm gonna try not to make this episode too time consuming because we do have about maybe 10 to 11 entries to cover, but I don't have extensive notes on this. I promise y'all I don't. I didn't take extensive notes. I took notes of the small things, and I'll just mention little mentions for each movie as I go along, because I don't want to break down every single movie and just bore the fuck out of everybody. But before we jump into it, let me say again, happy 28th anniversary to Children of the Corn 2, best entry in the entire franchise. It's a really hard act to follow as far as what I got, and I'll get into that once we get to Children of the Corn 2. Another funny thing about this series, if I can note it real quick, is that this series jumped off a lot of careers, man, and there are some faces in here you will see that went on to have amazing careers, man, and we'll talk about it, like I said, as the episode goes along. But to jumpstart this off, of course, we're gonna start this off with Children of the Corn, the original 1984 movie. It's directed by Fritz Kirsch. It's written by George Goldsmith. Now, this movie stars Peter Horton as Bert, Linda Hamilton as Vicky. John Franklin, of course, is the headliner here. He is the template for the boy preacher, just the antagonist, the main antagonist of the film. He plays Isaac. Courtney Gaines plays Malachi, who's basically Isaac's right hand man, but he gets kind of tired of his shit. And John Philbin plays Amos. John Philbin, a year later, would be in Return of the Living Dead playing Chuck. I wish I saw more of John Philbin in the 80s, man. But, it's good to see him in another horror movie, because, of course, I saw Return of the Living Dead first and then saw that he was in Children of the Corn afterwards. Now, really quick, my thoughts on the original Children of the Corn movie. I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't, of course, y'all know these are my opinions. I'm going to keep it a beam with y'all. The first Children of the Corn movie for me is overrated. It really is, man, because I feel like it's false advertising in a way. And I say that because, here they are advertising this movie. And the movie is a decent film, don't get me wrong. But here they are advertising a film to me. Now, I'm going to talk from my POV. They're advertising a film to me where, on the front cover, there are these children you see hiding in the cornfields, and their eyes are glowing. They're carrying all types of scythes and just harvest tools of any kind. And I'm under the impression that these kids are going to run the fuck amok in this town and just murder every adult. And they're just going to be like this murderous cult of children, which they are a murderous cult of children. But you really only get that in the opening scene. The opening scene's creepy as shit, because, you get the kid, I think his name is Job, and he's in the diner with his pop, and, the rest of the adults are in there, and all these, the kids either work there, the kids are either in there, or the kids are outside. Now, what happens is Isaac shows up, John Franklin's character Isaac shows up. He's got that big ass, a boy preacher Amish hat, and he's just creepy as shit, man. He's just staring at the window. He kind of gives the okay, or gives the, the green light for, the kids to lock these adults inside this diner, and everybody gets fucking murdered. They're slicing people's throats. They're stabbing people with cleavers. They're putting people's, fingers inside of the meat slicer. It's a low key 1984 type of massacre with these kids killing these adults. And after that, you really get this slow burn type road trip of a film with, Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton's character. Now, I don't know if this was before or after Linda Hamilton did Terminator, but again, a big name who went on to have a great career was in a Children of the Corn film. And, you get Bert and Vicky just on the road, and sometimes they get along, sometimes they don't. And then they come across this kid who's already been killed, and they think they killed him by running him over. I mean, they kind of did, because he was still alive. But, it's just a really kind of boring film, man. It's not a bad film. I don't mean to shit on this movie, but I did not get what I wanted from this movie. Now, the highlights here are when Bert starts fucking these kids up because he's getting tired of them. Bert being chased all throughout the town. I do love those scenes where Bert is just getting literally a run for his money with these kids that are going after him. And, that's a highlight. Courtney Gaines is a highlight here, because while John Franklin's character Isaac is the boy preacher, he is the main antagonist, Malachi gets tired of his shit, man. And he calls him out when they're in the clearing in the cornfield, and Isaac and Malachi are basically having like they're bumping heads, and Malachi is Isaac is basically, he's like the barking toy dog that's just like rah, 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 like to the bigger dog, and he swears he's just bigger than what he is, and he gets a fucking reality check, man. That's one of the highlights of the movie, where he's telling Malachi, he's like, down on your knees, heretic, and all that shit, and then Malachi just throws him on the ground, and he's like, cut the woman down and put Isaac in her place. It's like that scene is cool. The end where Isaac comes back when he's been possessed by He Who Walks Behind the Rose, and he breaks Malachi's neck, is cool. But, the movie overall, the ending is kind of, it's not pleasing. It's not climactic at all. And I just feel like I just didn't, I feel like I was bamboozled a little bit with the first film, man. And I don't know if anybody feels the same way I do, but like I said, I don't hate the original Children of the Corn. It's just it's a slow burn. There's not a lot of violence in it. I know the violence is tastefully done, and I don't know if that was on purpose or if it was an MPAA rating type of thing, but for a Stephen King adaptation, this movie is very tame, man. It's very tame, but it's not my least favorite in the series by a long shot. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I just feel like it's just a lackluster movie that jump started the entire series, man. That's just how I feel about it, people, and that's all I have to say about that. But again, shout out to the original, because there had there not been an original film, there wouldn't be 11 goddamn entries afterwards, or however many entries were after that. Now, moving on to the birthday flick right here, Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice, which came out in 1993. It was directed by David Price. It was written by A.L. Katz and Gilbert Adler. Now, Children of the Corn 2 stars Terrence Knox. He plays John. He's like a reporter type of guy. Paul Scherer, who plays Danny, that's John's son. He's the quintessential rebellious asshole teenager who would have got the shit punched out of him had he would have been my child, my son at least. You know what I'm saying? He's just got a smart ass mouth. He's he's got a lot of resentment for his father, which makes for a realistic dynamic between those two. You've got Ryan Bowman, who plays I want to say Micah. I always used to call him Mika, but I think it's Micah. And Rosalind Allen, who plays Angela. I used to have the craziest crush on Rosalind Allen. I used to call her like the white Halle Berry, because it's something about when she rocks that short hair, man. She's also in the movie Ticks. Y'all can check out my review for Ticks also, but yeah, she was always the white Halle Berry, man. I had a crazy crush on her in this movie and the movie Ticks. But now let's get into why I adore Children of the Corn 2. Now, Children of the Corn 2, whereas I didn't get what I was expecting in the first movie, this sequel gave me exactly what I wanted. You start off, and Dimension Films had picked this up, so you get the rightfully so, you get those nostalgic Dimension Films growls and those wails and a certain type of Dimension Films music. It was a certain atmosphere that they brought to their films when their films came over to their studio, whether it was Children of the Corn 2, whether it was Halloween 6, whether it was Hellraiser 3. And I know they changed up a lot of music with, I don't know if it was like Blu-ray releases or on TV or something, but I love Children of Corn 2. It starts off with the townspeople finding the parents that were murdered by these children. It's basically kind of like a direct sequel, because they do mention Isaac, the Mordecai and all the other kids that are in the clearing in the cornfield. They mention Isaac, and how he said that once all adults were dead, that we would see the truth, and we don't see shit. And one of the highlights here, of course, is the children, man. You literally see the children doing what they were supposed to do in that first movie. You see these kids, first of all, sometimes it's not even the kids, because you've got a crazy ass death sequence, 2 deaths actually, where these 2 reporters are in a news van and this crazy storm starts, and you could tell it's a supernatural storm from He Who Walks Behind the Rose. And there's a guy who's like, it's like a dried up corn stalk goes across his neck and cuts his throat, and he's bleeding out. And then his homie tries to start the car up, and then this big ass stick comes out of nowhere and just goes flying through the windshield and impales the guy through the neck. And then after they're dead, the storm stops. So it's not always the kids in this movie, man, which I think makes for a great supernatural element that the first movie lacked. Now, as far as the kids go, you have Micah leading these kids. Ryan Bowman, let me just say this, man. Ryan Bowman is by far the most, and I think I've told him this plenty of times. And he, shout out to Ryan Bowman, man, because he actually is one of those celebrities that will respond and interact with his fans on social media, man. I could really appreciate that, because it's a time where these celebrities, these big name people, don't get a chance to respond to all of these sea of comments and DMs and stuff like that online, or they just don't give a fuck to respond. But this guy has been very expressive in how appreciative he is of his fans, and he's replied to my comments a couple times. But shout out to him. But I've told him, man, he is hands down the most intimidating villain of the series, the boy preachers of the series, man. He'll just give you a look like he wants to murder you, and then he'll smile in some scenes. Is really fucking crazy. And if nobody remembers him, he actually, one of the main movies I remember him in was he played Donovan in Only the Strong. He's got one of the saddest fucking death scenes I've ever seen in my life, and in this movie too. But he's leading the children, and basically the kids, whether they're dropping houses on old ladies, whether they're remote controlling wheelchairs and causing old ladies to get hit by cars, whether they're stabbing the town doctors to death with scalpels, or not scalpels, with syringes. There's a scene where Micah is in church. This is one of the highlights of the entire movie, where there's the guy with the glasses. Micah's in church, in the back of the church, with a fucking voodoo doll, and he's just stabbing it in the ear, stabbing it in the nose, and the guy just starts just bleeding, literally just his whole face starts bleeding in church. And it is a nasty, vicious ass scene, man. It's a crazy ass moment in the film. And these kids are going for blood, man. And the kids, they rock out. They're way more intimidating. If I could change anything about the kids in this movie, I would change I would have them do a lot of chasing. That's one of the things I loved about the first movie, was how they chased down Bert, and they're just on foot trying to do what they got to do. But the kids are amazing in this movie, man. They're creepy as fuck. I like the dynamic between Paul Scherer and Terrence Knox. Like I said, it's a realistic dynamic. You've got the love interest of Rosalind Allen and Terrence Knox. There's a girl, I can't remember the girl's name, who plays Lacey. Is it Lacey Hellerstedt? I can't remember her full name, but the teenage son kind of has a gut busting crush over her. It's realistic, man, and it makes you take a deep dive into this town and the people inside of this town. You see the sheriff is corrupt. The sheriff doesn't want the character of John and Chief Red Bear. I can't remember that actor's name, and I really hope I did not get his name wrong, because I don't want people to think that was a racist comment. But I really want to say his name was Chief Red Bear in that movie. He tries to kill those guys because they're kind of finding out that, the fumes of that mold, the dust of that mold is spreading all over town, and it's making the kids go crazy. It's a nice little element that they added to Children of the Corn 2, man. It's got so many different layers to it. And I know it wasn't well received the way it should have been, but for the most part, this is how you do a fucking sequel, man. Especially to something like Children of the Corn, where you don't, it's what you do with a sequel to something like Children of Corn, where you didn't get that the first time around. You want to do it in spades the second time around. So again, that's why this is my favorite. And again, the ending kind of takes you through the motions, man, because the Indian guy, he's driving the harvester, he gets shot with an arrow, and I'm like, is that subliminal racism that the Indian guy gets shot with an arrow? The irony. But he gets shot with an arrow and he dies, trying to save the day. Then Mika is crying for help, and Micah's crying for help, and Danny runs to save him when the evil goes out of his body, and then he gets dragged into the harvester and dies. Then at the end, they burn the chief in the cornfield, and his spirit lives on and supposedly becomes the the guardian of Gatlin and all this crazy shit. It literally takes you through the motions, man. I love that sequel. Always love it. It will always be the best one in the entire series for me. Now, moving on. Already, people, we're about to be in part 3, and we already about to get into dark territory. Children of the Corn 3, Urban Harvest, came out in 1995. People, let me just say this, and let me make this clear before we go any further. This is where the Children of the Corn series started to lose his goddamn mind. I'm telling you, this shit went off the rails. This movie actually disturbed me as a kid. And you're talking to a kid who was a hardcore horror buff gorehound. I could watch all types of shit here and there. Children of the Corn 3 did something to me, man, because I had never seen effects like this before. It was directed by James D.R. Hickox. It's written by Matt Greenberg and Dode B. Levinson. It stars Daniel Kearney as Eli. He's the main, the boy preacher this time around, the antagonist. Ron Melendez, who plays Josh, who is Eli's adopted brother. Jim Metzler, who plays William. John Clare plays Malcolm. Marie Morrow, who plays Maria, who I always remember her from Family Matters. And none other than Charlize Theron, people, is in Children of the Corn 3. Like, how fucking crazy is that? And she hasn't aged a day, man. I promise y'all. If y'all go back, there's a scene where Daniel Kearney's character Eli is preaching to the kids. I think it's when they're inside of the abandoned warehouse. Or it might be it's either that scene or it's at the end where he's preaching to them in the cornfield that he's made in the back of this lot. Now, Charlize Theron, man, she's literally in that movie, man. I'm telling y'all, it's one of those two scenes, if not both. Y'all have to go back and watch it. Charlize Theron's definitely in that film. Now, Children of the Corn 3, man. Here we go with continuity. This shit has nothing to do with the movie before it, has nothing to do with the movie after it. This could very much be a standalone film. There are a couple flashbacks to Children of Corn 2, though, so I can't completely say that. There are flashbacks to the town doctor being killed, being stabbed to death by the children, but this shit starts off crazy, man. Like, Eli and Josh, like I said, they're adopted brothers. They've got this drunk, abusive piece of shit fathered, and, they live in Gatlin, in the cornfield in a trailer, and the father's about to beat the shit out of Josh, and Eli's like, I can handle him. You go. I'll catch up. And he's like, all right, man, I'm not leaving you. You bet. He's very protective over Eli, his little brother. Little does he know his little brother is the fucking Antichrist. But what Eli does is he turns their drunk, abusive piece of shit stepfather into a scarecrow. Like, this thing rises up out of the cornfield, and it crucifies him. His arms are like stretching so far that they're Jesus Christ. Excuse me. Almost choked to death just thinking about it. His arms stretch across the crucifix, the wooded crucifix, that they start splitting apart at some point. He sews his eyes up, he sews his mouth up, and he leaves that motherfucker up there, man. And he comes back later on in the film. Goddamn, we'll talk about that sequence in a minute. But, Eli and Josh, basically, they move to an urban area, the city area, way outside of Gatlin, and they get adopted. They get adopted by this loving, young, wealthy couple. I mean, they're pretty wealthy. The dad's like, I don't know if he's a stockbroker. I can't remember what the hell the dad does. But, these are a sweet couple, man. But little do they know, they've just taken in, Josh is cool for the most part, but Eli is on some shit. He's brought, corn with him from back home, and they're eating the corn, and he's planting little kernels in the backyard and all this stuff, and it turns into a cornfield. It's one of the reasons why it's Urban Harvest. Why Urban Harvest is the subtitle. But this movie, man, is wicked. If I can describe this movie in one word, is wicked as all hell. The shit Eli does in this movie, and again, it's one of those instances where it's not always Eli. But it is Eli doing the majority of these kills. You could have just easily called this Eli of the Corn, because I don't think the children do any murders in this film. But Eli, he kills not the lunch lady, but it's this black woman that works at the school they go to. And, he's like haunting her in the school, chasing her down, stalking her, and she tries to light a cigarette because she's so scared. And the flame from the cigarette flies into her mouth and melts her face off and all this other shit. The mom, there's a homeless guy who these ropes, not ropes, but goddamn, these vines come out of the ground and go into his eyes, and he's just a severed head in the cornfield that's kind of like a minion for Eli, just biting people's hands and shit. The character of Maria, Malcolm's sister, he has dinner with her and her parents, and the shit that he feeds them has bugs in it. They're they fall off the table, they fall over the table while they're eating dinner, and their heads crack open and bugs come flying out of it. It's fucking nuts, man. The shit that happens in this movie is batshit crazy. When I say this movie scarred me as a kid, it was like the effects really kind of low-key scared the hell out of me, man. And there's one scene in particular, man, like I said, we would get back to it. The dad that got turned into the Scarecrow, he is very much a scarecrow at this point, because there's a scene where Malcolm and Josh, they reconcile their differences because Josh tries to bone Malcolm's sister, and Malcolm walks in on him. But they reconcile their differences, and they know that Eli is not what he appears to be. Malcolm knows it. Malcolm's got that funny ass scene where he's like, look at this place, man. Where do you think everybody's at? This place is deserted. They're with your brother. He ain't shit. But like I said, they reconcile their differences, and I like Malcolm, man, because he's not just a token black guy. There's a lot of black faces in this movie, but he actually goes on a road trip to Gatlin with Josh to find the book so they can, stop Eli from whatever the hell he's doing in this city. Now, this sequence, man, let's get back to the Scarecrow, Papa Scarecrow. They go to Gatlin, they find the book, the Bible, the corn encrusted Bible that's going to stop Eli. Now, the Scarecrow, Father Scarecrow, he jumps off of the crucifix and he goes after Josh and Malcolm. They stop him, they cut him in half and they stop him. But what happens is they're about to leave and go back to the city so they can stop Eli, but they leave the Bible. So Malcolm runs back to get the Bible. And again, those fucking vines come out of the cornfield. They come in, they stick themselves in his crotch. They stick themselves in his legs, in his chest, in his back. They pull him down to the ground. Now, these leaves, these vines, whatever the hell they are, wrap around his neck. And I swear to you people, I've never seen no shit like this in my life. They wrap around Malcolm's neck, and it's a crazy, wicked effect, man. They wrap around his neck, and what they do is they pull his body down into the ground, further and further and further down into the ground, while pushing his head upward. And this motherfucker's spine, his body is just crushing into the ground like a broken accordion or something, while his head is just being elevated and elevated and elevated into the high heavens. This motherfucker's spine is like 17,000 feet tall, while his head is still moaning and groaning and making sounds like he's in pain. It's one of the most disturbing scenes I've ever seen in my fucking life, man. It will haunt my dreams forever. It's really hard for me to watch that scene. And while, you can tell it's a special effect, it is insane the way they pulled it. I'm mad that I didn't write down, the special effects artist for the movie, because he did a hell of a job on this film, man. And, the ending goes way off the rails. It's crazy. I don't know if this monster that comes up out the ground, it's like stop motion miniature type of shit. You can tell the effects don't hold up well at all. But I don't know if that monster is supposed to be He Who Walks Behind the Rose, because in the cornfield, the monster rises up. It's eating kids. It's murdering kids. It picks up the girl, Maria, and eats her. And Josh has got to stop it. And, it cuts it open and saves her. She's all bloody and shit. And he does end up stopping Eli. But overall, man, Children of the Corn 3 is really where they started taking liberties, and they said, you know what, we're going to go, because I think it was the first time they went straight to DVD release. I don't know if it was a limited theatrical release. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't. And this is not my least favorite, again, but this is a movie that I don't just pick it up like, yeah, I'm gonna watch Children of the Corn 3, or if it's on TV, it's like, oh shit, Children of the Corn 3 is on. It's like, no, I have to be in a mood to watch that film, preferably not sober. I don't always have to be drunk when I watch it, but I have to put myself in a mood to sit through that movie, because it's just so crazy. It goes off the rails. Now, speaking of off the rails, this one is off the rails as well, but it's a little more grounded, and it's hands down my second favorite entry and the scariest entry in the entire series. I didn't think a Children of the Corn film could be scary for me, but this one is it, man. I remember I had nightmares about this movie as a kid. And funny thing is, there's a lot of nightmare dream sequences in this entire movie. That's one of the reasons why people really don't enjoy it as much. I heard online a lot, but I love the fuck out of this movie, man. Children of the Corn 4, The Gathering, which was released a year later, 1996. Now, this was directed by Greg Spence. It was also written by Greg Spence and Steven Berger. Now, the thing about this movie, another big name who went on after this film to have an amazing career. Naomi Watts is the headliner here. She's our protagonist. She plays Grace. Karen Black, who is horror royalty, she plays June, Naomi Watts' character's mother. Jamie Renee Smith plays Margaret, who, she's a part of the big plot twist in the movie. Samaria Graham plays Mary Ann, and she's super fine in this movie. I don't know what she's been in after. I've probably seen her in something, but I love her in this movie as she's the token black chick, but she's the best friend of Naomi Watts' character. But I love her character because when shit starts hitting the fan with these kids, she's like, check please, I'm out of here. Like, she is not with the shits at all, but she does stick around, and that kind of leads to her demise, man. Being a good, us wearing our hearts on our sleeves, man, may be our demise at times. And Brent Jennings, of course, plays Donald. I always call Brent Jennings Louis Gossett Jr. 2.0 because that motherfucker looks just like Louis Gossett Jr. Mainly in Jaws 3. Oh, and Brandon Claya plays Josiah, which it's a crazy plot twist. One of the best in the film that they actually took out of the movie. And I'm so mad. Now, excuse me, Children of Corn 4. Here's the deal with Children of Corn 4. Like I said, there are a lot of nightmare sequences in this film that really don't count. But I feel like as far as the mark they leave on me, they count. The beginning scene is a nightmare sequence. Karen Black, Brandon Claya, he knocks on the door. He's got a bloody hand, and she's like, "Oh my God, like, let me help you. Let me get some peroxide." And, one of the things that they do to nod back to the original is the preacher on the radio, because that's something Bert and Vicky were listening to, and it kind of made fun of it. The preacher on the radio that was just screaming when they were in the car. But what had happened was Karen Black is getting peroxide and some cotton swabs or whatever for the young boy that shows up at her crib. Why she let this fucking strange kid in, I have no idea. But she, as she's, going downstairs, she walks past a bedroom and the radio's playing, and the preacher's on the radio like, "The slaughter of innocent children ran the streets red with blood, red, amen, hallelujah." And it's scary. I can't get that radio voice out of my head, from the moment I heard it. But what happens is the boy transforms and, he comes rushing towards her. She wakes up. Now you find out that, Karen Black's character, June, she has, I want to call it agoraphobia. Don't quote me on that. I probably said it all wrong, or probably said the wrong word in particular. But basically, it's her, she can't go past a certain spot on her porch or on her property. She's scared to leave the house. Not so much the house, but her property in general. And she can't, she'll go to get the paper and she won't take one step past where she goes to get the paper off her property. So her character's got this crazy arc to it, which I like. She's not an underdeveloped character. Her acting's is very weird, which, it makes her character weird, but I love her acting in the film. And, Naomi Watts basically, she comes back home to Gatlin to be the town, to help the town doctor and stuff like that. And she just wants to get on her feet and go back to school and this, that, and the other. But, she's got a sister and a brother there. But, the plot twist at the end, spoiler alert, is that her sister is actually her daughter. And, she had to give her up to get her shit together, whatever the case may be. Now, the children here do some killing, but for the most part, it's the character of Josiah, the antagonist, the boy preacher. The one thing about this movie that they added to, the Children of Corn element is that Josiah is undead. He is at the bottom of a well when we first see him. Half his face is burned up, and there's an old town drunk in the barn, and he awakens Josiah, and Josiah, he brings down with magical powers. He doesn't have to touch anything. He brings down a pitchfork on the guy's arm. He brings down a shovel on the guy's stomach. He brings down a machete on his a harvest knife on his dick. He brings down a machete on his arm. He fucks him up, and then he grabs a big ass harvest knife again, and he cuts his entire head off. But then you see Josiah afterwards. He's like burning the body, and he's doing like he's putting like a cross made out of blood on his hand, and he's lighting his hand on fire and doing some type of voodoo magic. It's the atmosphere. This film has the best atmosphere in the entire series. It feels like a horror movie, man. The movie is scary as shit, at least for me. because it plays out like a supernatural slasher film, man. Even when you don't see Josiah doing the killing, there's a scene where Brent Jennings' wife gets murdered in her son's bedroom, and you don't see it, but you see her screaming, and she puts her hand out, and you just see there's a camera angle of the harvest knife just swinging, and it cuts her fingers off, but then you just see blood splashing against the sun, splashing against the windows where the kids are outside. And speaking of the kids, man, one of the things I absolutely love about this movie is they took what they did in the second movie as far as like the kids, the corn and the dust spreading all over the fields and fucking with the kids. They took it a step further by, once Josiah is resurrected, the kids in town in Gatlin start getting fevers. They start getting fevers. They start getting really sick. They start naming themselves after dead children of the town. And what else happens is their teeth start falling out. So you got, Naomi Watts' character, Grace, going to the hospital. The hospital is flooded with parents bringing their sick, feverish children in there. The children the children are so out of it. They're almost zombie-like. And it's just like, it's almost like an epidemic in itself. And it's really fucking creepy to see how these kids in the town transition into these cult followers, man. And, there's some decent kills in this movie, man. There's a kill where the two twin boys, Scott and I can't remember the other kid's name, but they're on a gurney. They're one's pushing the other twin on a gurney. They cut the doctor on the head, and then the gurney comes back without the kids, and the doctor can't go anywhere because he can't get through the door. And a big ass blade comes out of the gurney and cuts the doctor in half. Like, it's some cool scenes in here, man. The big ass harvest knife goes flying into the character of Mary Ann's head. It's a crazy supernatural slasher, man, but it's terrifying in some scenes, man. Naomi Watts has a dream sequence where she sees Josiah in just regular human form, but he looks kind of sick, and he disappears. And then they cut to Naomi Watts, and then when they cut back to the bedroom, you see somebody tiptoeing, but their feet are hooves. They're fucking hooves. And when they showed that in the trailer, I'm like, yo, I don't know what's going on in this movie, but it's creeping me the fuck out, man. And the barn sequence where, they have to find Josiah, and they spike the shotgun shells with mercury because that's what killed Josiah when he, that's what they poisoned him with, the townspeople, before he, came back undead and all that type of stuff. The fact that they spiked the shells and they're trying not to shoot kids, and, the kids are just, they're standing over this pool and they're cutting their hands and they're letting the blood drip into the pool, and they start chanting, "We bring them our flesh." It's kind of like in part 2 when they chant, when Micah cuts their hands and he says, "We are one, and they're chanting. It's crazy they're chanting, man, because they're saying, "We bring them our flesh." It's like, god damn. But even in shadow, Josiah is creepy as shit because he keeps rushing out at Grace and she keeps shooting him, and she ultimately defeats him. And it's not really a happy ending because Grace lost her mother and stuff like that. But they do drive off. I'm not gonna say into the sunset, but they drive off at the end, and that's that. Brent Jennings' character saves his son, and Margaret is saved, and everybody's cool at the end of the day. But this is hands down my second favorite movie in the series, and it's the only movie that's actually scary at the end of the day. There's no movie that comes close to the atmosphere and just the overall just creepy vibe that Children of the Corn 4 has, man. So big ups to Children of the Corn 4, man. I know I spent way more time than I should have on that. Now, moving on. Children of the Corn 5, Fields of Terror, 1998. This movie holds a very special place in my heart, man, and I will get to why, but I just really wanted to put that out there. And it's not because of certain casting choices in this film, but mainly because of how these characters are written and how these characters are portrayed. And you don't really get too much of that in a Children of the Corn movie. Well, you do, but you don't expect it, because you had two characters you rooted for in the first one. You had characters you rooted for in the second. The third one, maybe 3 characters max. The fourth one, cool. You know what? I take that back. You do have characters that you root for. At least I do in a Children of the Corn movie. They're not always written terribly. But these are probably the characters I cared about the most. I'll just say that. Now, Children of Corn 5 was written and directed by Ethan Wiley, and it stars Stacy Galena as Allison. Alexis Arquette, rest in peace. Shout out to Alexis Arquette, man. He was such an underrated actor, man. Who plays Greg. Eva Mendes, again, another big name who started in Children of Corn and went off to have an amazing career. I was just watching her in The Other Guys, where she played Will Ferrell's wife. She plays Kier. Greg Vaughn, who plays Ty. Fred Williamson. Jesus, man. Fred Williamson was already established at that point, but he plays, Officer Skaggs. David Carradine, like, what? You got a casting steal like David Carradine to play Luke. Kane Hodder's got a cameo in this movie as the bartender. Ahmet Zappa. I don't know if anybody remembers Ahmet Zappa. I think he was like a VJ for MTV or something like that. I used to love that guy's energy. He kind of gave me Billy Zane vibes in a lot of different ways. And then you had Adam Wiley, who plays Ezekiel. Now, no diss to Adam Wiley. He is probably the least effective boy preacher antagonist that I've seen in the movies that I actually caught up with in this series. I don't like him at all as the boy preacher, because he reminds me of Eric Bates from The Toy. I can't remember that actor's name, but he literally reminds me of Eric Bates from the fucking Toy. But moving on. This movie, like I said, holds a special place in my heart because of these characters. The characters of Allison, Greg, Kier, and Ty, they are four friends who have an urn full of their friends' ashes who committed suicide, or it was, that's the plot twist. He committed suicide. They thought it was a bungee jumping incident, but he ultimately killed himself, and he is the ex-boyfriend of Eva Mendes' character, Kier. But, they're driving into town to spread the ashes and honor their friend. They ultimately take a wrong turn. And I think it's funny because I met Zappa's character and his girlfriend, Charlotte. They're first in line, basically. So, Lexus Arquette and them are following them. But what I met Zappa is doing is strapping inflatable sex dolls to these road signs and pointing them in the direction that they're going in so they can follow them the right way. But what happens is I met Zappa and his girlfriend. His girlfriend, for some fucking reason, when he's strapping he's pointing the doll in one direction, his girlfriend just up and gets out the car and disappears to go in the cornfield to gather up, ears of corn. It's like, who the fuck does that shit? You know what I'm saying? Like, thank God it wasn't the era where cell phones was all crazy, because it's like, I would have texted my girl. No, fuck that. I would have called my girl like, yo, like, where'd you go? Like, you just went out into the cornfield to just get some dinner or something? Like, no, we've got ears of corn at the crib. I'm cool off that shit. But you know what happened. She goes into the cornfield. She gets her ass sliced up by the kid Jared. He's like probably like, that kid looks like he's like 21 amongst teenagers in that Children of Corn movie. He's tall as hell. Probably the tallest actor in the movie. But she gets sliced the fuck up in that joint. She doesn't even die right away. So that's probably how like she was probably in shock. But what happens is, Ahmet Zappa sees the kids surrounding her and sees Ethan Wiley kind of scolding the character Jared. He's like, what if she wasn't alone? Did you think of that? Find that guy that just ran off and made all that noise and couldn't be conspicuous. So they're chasing Ahmet Zappa in the cornfield, and what happens is one of the kids grabs him and pushes him backwards into one of those big ass harvest knives, and he doesn't even die. What happens is the kid Jared, he looks down at the knife in his chest, sticking out his chest, and he's like, that doesn't look right. And then the kid Jared swings an axe at him. You don't see it, but you just see the blood fly, and it's a wrap. But basically, our main four, our quartet, take a they take a turn, and the car gets fucked up in the cornfield. So they go to a bar in town, and then they're just like, who is, where do we go from here? They get a couple beers, and then Kane Hodder's like, or not Kane Hodder, but there's a guy in there who's actually in Children of Corn 6, and he's like, yeah, man, the kids at the end right place, they worship He Who Walks Behind the Rose. And then you see Allison knows something triggers her like that when she hears He Who Walks Behind the Rose. So you have this mission basically in the movie where Stacey Galina's character Allison wants to find her brother Jacob, because her brother ran away from their abusive, drunk piece of shit father, and he went to join a cult. Like most teenagers do. It's 2021. It's not out of the ordinary, people. But the thing about this movie, while, the kids are murdering people, and and that's one thing I forgot to mention. You do see Adam Wiley's character Ezekiel. You do see him get possessed in the beginning of the movie. He's not a human boy preacher. He gets possessed. He's regular, and then he's at this campfire that's in the cornfield somewhere, and then it just lashes out at him and goes into his chest, and then you see his eyes all fiery and shit like that. And he's just evil. He's possessed at that point. But basically, the reason why this movie stands out, and it's got some really good effects. I love that the kids are the kids are almost like the grown-up versions of Children of the Corn, because the way that they chase these motherfuckers in the cornfield, the way that they are just relentlessly pursuing these four characters in this film is great. But I love the way these characters are written, man. These characters have my heart more than any of the characters, the main cast of characters in this series, man. Stacy Galena, Alexis Arquette has a crush on her, but they're best friends. They don't take it there. You can tell they want to, but they don't for the sake of the film. Eva Mendes's character Kier and Greg Vaughn's character Ty, they fuck around, have a one night stand, and Eva Mendes is cold blooded in this John, because Ty basically has his moment where he tells Kier, he's like, listen, about last night. She's like, yeah. And he's like, it wasn't just a one night stand for me. And she's like, well, I'm sorry, Ty, that's all it was for me. And she just walks off, and I'm like, damn, bruh, she just used you for the D and just walked off. But in reality, it's fucking Eva. You got smutted by Eva Mendes, dog. That is an accomplishment in life. You should be proud of something like that. But I love these characters, man, because they're not written poorly. I love all four of these characters. Fred Williamson, I love his character as just he's the very stern, he's not even an officer. He's the sheriff. He's a very stern black sheriff, man. I love his character in the film. David Carradine's just very laxed in this movie. You could tell either he was just getting a check or he was just that comfortable in the role as Luke. And, Luke is not all he appears to be at the end of the movie. Apparently he's a demon. His fucking head splits open and a little mini dragon comes out, whatever that shit is, and spits fire in Fred Williamson's face and blows the back of his head off. It's an insane movie, man. They take the insane elements of some of the insane elements of part 3 and part 4, but they don't go as crazy with it. The death scenes are pretty decent. They're pretty violent. There's this girl who's always angry. She kind of looks like Elijah Dushku in the film. She's one of the main children in the film, but she slices this cop. There's two versions of this movie. There's I guess not the theatrical, but just the regular version and the unrated version. The unrated version, there's a scene where this girl I'm talking about, the cop hears a sound and he runs, and the camera's rolling, and when he turns the corner, she slices his throat, and you see the blood just spray all over the place. And it's like, yo, he was already going to die, and then she starts stabbing him in the stomach. It's insane, man. But then that the ending doesn't make sense. The ending doesn't make sense, man, because Allison's brother Jacob, he ends up dying because they string him up because they want him, when you turn 18, they want you to jump into the eternal flame and kill yourself, basically, so you can join He Who Walks Behind the Rose. But Jacob doesn't do it. And, he's got a pregnant girlfriend, and his girlfriend wants to stay with her family. But Jacob betrays basically the children, and they fuck him up, and they string him up, and they stab him. Ezekiel stabs him, but he ends up bleeding out and dying from the stab wound. Now, the girlfriend has the baby, and when it's all said and done, and then because Ezekiel gets thrown into the eternal flame by Allison, and his ass is done. The rest of the people die. Alexis Arquette sacrifices himself to kill a couple of the kids. Eva Mendes sacrifices herself by jumping into the eternal flame like an asshole. Greg Vaughn's character Ty ends up getting his throat cut by one of those kids. So Allison and the pregnant girlfriend of her brother make it out, and then at the end, the parents are like, yeah, she's not old enough to raise a child, thank you, Allison. And Allison singing like Hush Little Baby and all of this stuff, and then the baby's eyes just start glowing and with that fury eternal flame, the same way that Ezekiel's were in the beginning of the film. And I'm like, so it's a baby of the corn? Like, I just didn't understand the fucking ending at all. And, again, this could function as a standalone movie. It has nothing to do with 4, has nothing to do with 6. There are no references of Isaac. The only thing that these movies really have in common overall is the town of Gatlin. That's it, is the town of Gatlin. These are standalone films, people. I'm telling you, you could watch any of these movies and really not, except 6, and really not have to have seen anything prior or anything after. Now, moving on, but like I said, I do give credit where it's due, because I love these characters, the 4 characters, the main characters, man. They are the best written characters as far as the protagonists go in the entire series for me. Now, moving on, a year later, 1999, we got Children of the Corn 666. Isaac's Return. Now, I remember seeing this, I had a bootleg ball that I used to go to. I used to get my bootleg, movies from my ball down, when I was down South Philly. Ellsworth and Federal. You know, he was in a check cashing spot, and I used to go over there, and I remember I was like, Children of Corn 6. I'm like, Isaac died, but I said, fuck it, we'll try it out. Now, this movie, and for anybody that lost me, Isaac was the boy preacher, the antagonist of the original Children of the Corn film. Now, this was directed by Cary Scoglin, is written by John Franklin, Isaac himself, and Tim Solka. Now, this movie stars Natalie Ramsey, who plays Hannah, the main protagonist. She was also in Cherry Falls. Did a review for Cherry Falls if y'all want to check that out. Nancy Allen, had a crazy crush on Nancy Allen back in the day when she was in RoboCop and Poltergeist 3, ooh la la. But she plays Rachel. She plays Hannah's mother. John Franklin is back as Isaac. Alex Karomze plays Cora. I love her. She's in Mimic 1, Mimic 2. I wish she was in so many more movies, man. I love Alex Karomze. Stacy Keach plays Michaels, who I think was in Class of 1999. And you got Paul Popowich, who plays Gabriel, who has one of the craziest plot twists in the entire movie. Now, speaking of that plot twist, I think I have to backtrack for a second. I don't know if I mentioned this already, and my mistake if I didn't. One of the plot twists in Children of Corn 4 that they wrote out for Josiah, there was a scene that was in the movie that they took out. And I'm like, why would y'all do this? Josiah was actually he who walks behind the rose in Children of Corn 4, but they removed that scene from the movie, and I'm just like, why the fuck would y'all do that? But I'm going to make that come full circle here, because I said the character Gabriel has a crazy plot twist. Now, with Children of the Corn 6, this is a movie I appreciate very much. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. While it's not my favorite, I appreciate the continuity. I appreciate the return of Isaac. This is the one that goes hand in hand with the first movie. If you're gonna watch the first movie, you could easily skip over 2, 3, 4, and 5 and go straight into part 6. It syncs up pretty well, even though John Franklin is the only returning character from that movie. But basically, Isaac wasn't, he hasn't been dead after we last saw him in the first movie. He's been in a coma for 19 years. But what awakens him is this character, Natalie Ramsey's character, Hannah. She comes into the town of Gatlin to basically find her mother. And there's all of this prophecy and your birthright type of thing, which adds to the creep factor, because when she comes into town, people already know who she is, and she has no idea. She picks up a preacher, the same guy that was spitting the He Who Walks Behind the Rose Gems in part 5. I guess that's continuity right there. If you want to call it that. But, he just up and disappears. And of course, Hannah crashes into the cornfield, and, the cop, Alex Karomze is a cop, and she comes and she's like, oh my God, it's Hannah. We got to bring you into town right away. You got to see the town doctor. This is not up for debate. So the town doctor knows who she is. Gabriel knows who she is. Everybody, even the children of the children. That's one of the other things I like about this movie. The kids in this film are the kids of the kids in the original film, children of the children. And Gabriel actually tells Hannah that in the film. And I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. That is, that's continuity for your ass. Now, this movie doesn't have a lot of death scenes in it. I know Stacy Keach's character, he gets electrocuted by Isaac when Isaac wakes up on that bullshit. He's like, wait, where am I? How long have I been asleep? She's like, 19 years. You have a son, Isaac, which doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, did they get his shit up while he was in a coma, and then just had a chick just, ride him, and then, he just happened to just bust a nut while he was in a coma, and now he's got a son 19 years later? Whatever, whatever, man. But Isaac wakes up, he's like, I got a son? Oh my God, let me get my hat, let me get my preacher outfit. Cool, I'm back on my bullshit. And he right back on that preacher boy shit, putting candles out with his hand and preaching, talking about some I don't have a soul. He electrocutes Stacy Keach in one scene. I really can't remember too many other death scenes. The movie is I will say this, the movie is not badly written. And I don't mind that the kills, maybe I'm biased because I did a lot of preaching about how, the first movie was such a slow burn. But this movie, I guess, with being as though I went through part 2, 3, mainly 3, 4, and 5, I don't mind that they take time out to focus on the story, and it's not a shit ton of kills in this film. One kill that is crazy in this movie is Isaac's son's girlfriend. They catch them both trying to run away, and they bring him to the clearing, and Isaac cuts his girlfriend in fucking half. He cuts her in half, and the effect is crazy. Before she splits in half, they show like a close-up on her face, and I guess the prosthetic just looks so insane on this actress that it looks like he really cut this bitch in half. and her body falls in half. And then, you know, another death scene is self-inflicted. Isaac's son actually puts the harvest knife down on the ground. He sits it upright and he falls on it, which is it's a hard scene to watch, like, because it's in slow motion and they prolong it a lot, and he falls in slow motion on the harvest knife and impales himself. It reminded me of when Jeremy Sisto killed himself in the beginning of that movie Hideaway. Underrated film with Jeremy Sisto and Jeff Goldblum, Alicia Silverstone, Alfred Molina. But nonetheless, like I said, the thing I like most about this movie is the continuity, the return of Isaac, the ongoing story, the characters. But the ending is very fucking crazy for me. It's not like a crazy just Children of Corn 3 ending, but the ending of this film is so insane for me because the revelation they come up with, you know, it was all of this birthright and the prophecy type of thing will be fulfilled. But there is a scene where Hannah gets away and Gabriel saves her. They end up having sex under, you know, in the farm, in the shower, or in the barn rather, in the shower. And, you know, Isaac's got Hannah's mom kidnapped, and, you know, Gabriel and Hannah go into the barn and find her mother. So they want to rescue the mother, and Gabriel's kind of looking at Isaac like, you motherfucker, like, you knew that such and such was supposed to happen. And Hannah's just looking around like, wait, what are y'all talking about? And then we realize, if we didn't realize it before, that Gabriel has magic powers. You know, he turns basically Isaac into a marionette doll, and he's got his hand over his head, and he's like maneuvering him like a puppet. And the way Isaac is moving, you can tell the actor John Franklin has strings attached to him or wires, but the way he's moving is pretty creepy. And you know, when he does that to Isaac, he even says, "On your knees, bitch," and then he just starts treating him like a marionette doll, and he's enjoying it. He's got a big ass gleeful smile on his face. And then you know, Hannah's mother, Nancy Allen, looks at him. She's like, "He who walks behind the rose, oh my God." And Hannah's like, "Who the fuck is he who walks behind the rose?" And Gabriel turns to her and he says, "Me." And you find out Gabriel's he who walks behind the rose. It's crazy. So your baby daddy is none other than he who walks behind the rose. And then, you know, she ends up stabbing him. Gabriel ends up blowing the whole place up. And, you know, it's a really insane ending. And be that as it may, I do appreciate the, you know, this could have easily been the last Children of the Corn film. It would have been crazy to see how this child grows up and asks, like, who's my father? Oh, well, your father was he who walks behind the rose. I'll talk to you about that. Let me break out this bottle of bourbon. You're old enough to drink, type of shit. It would have had to been one of those types of situations because the ending is just so strange, man. But the movie overall is, excuse me, is not bad at all. Now, moving on, because we are almost an hour up into this beach. Whoo, this is where the series lost me, man. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. It's about to get very brief at this point, man, just so I can wrap this sheet up. 2001. Number 7, Children of the Corn Revelation. It was directed by Guy Magar. It was written by S.J. Smith, and it stars Claudette Mink as Jamie, Michael Ironside, who's a cast in steel for a Children of the Corn film, as the priest, and Crystal Lowe, who plays Tiffany. I really want to say she changed her name, but Crystal Lowe, if nobody knows, she was basically the Margot Kidder type of character in the Black Christmas remake in 2006, and she also was in Final Destination 3. She was not the blonde-haired girl, but the darker-haired girl who got burned to death in the tanning bed. And clearly, and she was also in Wrong Turn 2. Clearly, Crystal Lowe is an actress who has no problem getting naked on screen. Who doesn't mind that? She's a trooper. She's like a modern-day Linnea Quigley. Good for her. Now, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, man. Children of the Corn Revelation, I've seen it once or lack thereof. It's one of those movies that came on like HBO or Cinemax back in the day. And I remember watching it, and the movie pretty much watched me because I'm like, this is one of the most boring fucking entries I've ever seen in my life. This is the entry that literally lost me, and I lost all interest in really investing in this series, whether they were batshit crazy sequels or not. This one was just boring. All I remember is a black guy's dead head in like a refrigerator or something. I remember one of the weakest, I'll give Adam Wiley's Ezekiel boy preacher character a pass, a big pass compared to this motherfucker who was in, who was in Children of Corn Revelations, who was the boy preacher. He is just so non-existent, ineffective. I know the plot for it was something like a woman goes to investigate a murder or investigate her, like some shit she's going to investigate. The movie just does not feel like a Children of the Corn film at all. I don't know if it was just, they had Dimension Films had to meet a quota on some Hellraiser shit. Like, all right, we got to make 3 more movies within the next 3 years, or we just won't meet this quota and we'll never get to make another Children of Corn movie again. I just feel like it was a cop-out film, man, because you could have easily called it something else and people wouldn't have hated it as much. But you had to cash in off the name and get that straight to DVD money, which y'all didn't really deserve, because that movie was a boring piece of shit. And no disrespect to the actors and actresses involved in it, but it was just a sleeper, man. It was a bad sleeper, and it was crazy that Michael Ironside even signed up for something like this. But you've got he was already established by then. He was established back when Scanners came out, for God's sakes, probably before then. But I feel like if you had a cast in steel like Michael Ironside, you would have wanted to make a better film overall, but I guess that just wasn't in the cards for them, so it ain't in the cards for me to elaborate any further, man. It's not a good movie. It's one of the weakest sequels I've talked about up until this point. And, we're moving on to another weak sequel, which I can kind of give a pass to as far as the one, as far as Revelation goes, but it's still bad. Children of the Corn Genesis. 2011, this movie came out. I remember getting this DVD. I said, all right, Genesis, we about to go back to the beginning, huh? Let's see what we can pull off, man. Y'all got a lot of splaining to do. This movie was written and directed by Joel Soisson, and it stars Tim Rock as Tim, Kellen Coleman as Ali, Billy Drago as the preacher. That's your cast and steel right there. Dwayne Whitaker plays Pritchett. Dwayne Whitaker, he was in, Dusk Till Dawn and Pulp Fiction, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. He's in a lot of films, man. Dwayne Whitaker, I like him as a character actor. This movie is also very weird because while it is a Children of the Corn Genesis film, there are no children in the corn murdering kids. It's a supernatural movie. This is another one of those films where you did not have to call this a Children of the Corn movie. Again, you're just trying to cash in and put asses in the seats at home and just make some money off of these DVD sales, man. It's another cop-out. But they've got that hot chick from Hostel, the one that's like, you don't like cigarette? I put away. The one that Jay Hernandez was fucking in the movie. It's got her in it. And she's pushing up on Tim Rock while he's on the phone trying to call for a tow truck and all of this shit while his pregnant girlfriend's in the other room. She's horny as fuck. And this is supposed to be Billy Drago's wife or girlfriend in the movie because, Tim and Ali are a couple, and they get stranded or whatever happens, and they come across this little barn, this farmhouse, and they find Billy Drago and the chick from Hostel in there. And Billy Drago's he's Captain Exposition in this movie. He's just, he who walks behind the roses. Basically, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm just doing what they paid me to do and reading from the script. It's like, none of this shit means anything. Now, maybe the exposition does. Maybe I'll go back and watch it if I get bored or drunk enough. I don't know. I doubt it. But none of this shit means anything. I don't even really remember the ending. I remember a little kid playing with toy cars and, a car crash actually happening on the highway. But the film is just boring. As much as you want to root for this guy and his pregnant girlfriend, it's like you kind of don't give a fuck whether they make it out of there or not because there's nothing happening. So there's no threat for me to be afraid for their safety. You know what I mean? It's another cop out of a film, but I give it a pass. Because I probably remember more about that one, and that's not saying much, than I do Children of the Corn Revelation. But again, Genesis was just not a good entry. And I'm not saying that we are, talking about the most extravagant sequels after part 2 or after part 4 or even part 5 for that matter, or 6. Listen, we're not talking about the most extravagant series overall, but I'm just saying, if you're going to make a Children of the Corn film, have children in the corn. This shit has nothing to do with anything at all. I feel like this was something that they came up with in the board meeting, and they're like, you know what? Nobody's going to buy this DVD. Nobody's going to watch this fucking movie. What can we do with the rewrites? And somebody raised their hand. It's like, yes, you. And he's like, we could throw in He Who Walks Behind the Rose. It's like, got it. You get a raise and you get a raise for helping him with that idea. Let's call it Children of Corn Genesis. You know, let's fool people. And then they added that opening and that exposition from Billy Drago's character. Nah, it's a cop-out film, man. No disrespect, again, to the director or anybody involved. I just don't enjoy this movie at all. Now, moving on. Number 9, we're almost done, people. I promise y'all. We are officially an hour into this, so yeah, we're about to wrap this up. Children of the Corn, the remake, came out in 2009. Wait, how the fuck did I go from 2011 to 2009? I have no idea. Whatever, man. I've got my dates fucked up. Y'all can tell I'm going just as off the rails as this fucking series has. I got my years mixed up and all of that. Children of the Corn, you know, the TV version, I should have put that first. But, you know, Genesis came out after. But, you know, 2009 is when this TV remake came out. Now, this was directed by Donald B. Borchers. And it was written by Donald P. Borchers. I'm losing it, people. Hold up. Give me 1 second, people. I'm going to polish off this coffee 1 second. All right. I feel like I got my electrolytes light once again. Oh, okay. We're going to make it, people. We are going to make it. Now, David Anders plays this version's movie Bert. And Candace McClure plays Vicky. Preston Bailey plays Isaac. Almost said praise. Candace McClure was actually, I recently saw her in the Mother's Day remake with Larique Bent, with Rebecca De Mornay. I love her in that movie. I like her as an actress altogether. This movie, I remember watching it once. I remember the highlights of this being, of course, Candace McClure on screen, but I really enjoyed Malachi. I'm mad that I did not write down the actor's name. Malachi, if he wasn't intimidating before and imposing as one of the Children of Corn, he's like he's like Courtney Gaines on steroids a little bit in this movie. But Isaac was kind of, if I remember correctly, Preston Bailey was a child. Like, he was really a kid in that film. But those stand out. Malachi and Vicky in this movie stand out. I like them on screen. And another thing that stands out is Bert in this movie ain't fucking around. I remember him breaking one of the kids' necks in the cornfield so they couldn't scream out and you know, yell like Outlander or whatever. But one of the things that also stood out in this movie was the fact that Vicky is killed in this film. Candace McClure's character is actually killed off, and I did not expect that. I think when that happened, I was ready to just stop watching it altogether. But again, overall, this is a remake that I didn't really feel like was strong enough, man. Maybe I'll go back and watch it. I don't know, because I've only seen it once. And even when I watched it, I was kind of like in and out, because I would like go in the kitchen and do something and come back. And then I would go to do this and then come back. But this is a movie, this is the one in the series I want to go back and watch the most. Because while I say the first one is overrated and it's boring, and it's a very slow burn, I feel like there are more things I could appreciate about this made for TV remake than I expect. Because it is way more vicious. You know what I'm saying? Vicky's death, or I don't know if they show her death, but he does find her body, and you know, just the idea of snapping necks in the cornfields, which is realistic, because look, everybody ain't gonna fuck around and play with these kids, man. It's the same thing as real life. This is one of the reasons why adults are stealing off and fucking up these kids now. You know what I'm saying? Because these kids don't know how to act. You know what I'm saying? And kids are not, if you're old enough to cut up, you know, in the case of this series, literally, if you old enough to cut up, not even metaphorically, you old enough to get that ass beat or get that neck snapped. You know what I'm saying? I would not fuck around with those kids. I'm whooping ass. And if y'all trying to kill me, if my life is at stake, then all will be forgiven. God knows my heart. And fuck he who walks behind the rose, because he ain't going to save y'all at the end of the day. Now, I will go back, and this will be the one I go back and watch, the Children of Corn 2009 remake. Now, number 10, Children of Corn Runway came out in 2018, written by Joel Soisson and directed by John Golger. I have nothing to say about this movie because I didn't see it, and I remember they were advertising it. I had no interest in seeing it, so I'm not even going to really elaborate on that film. I know it's garbage. I know it is. There's no reason for me to watch it. And I know there's people out there like, well, if you didn't watch it, how can you form an opinion? It's like, listen, my gut, my instinct Show me your instincts. It shows me that there's no need for me to watch this film at all. So moving on. There was a remake that was recently made. They dropped it either last month or early this year. I fucking forgot the name of it. Children of the Corn. I don't fucking know. Children of the Corn, Cream Corn. I don't know. But it was written and directed by Kurt Wimmer. And Kurt Wimmer, funny enough, he was the writer on the movie Equilibrium. He was the writer on the Total Recall remake, Law Abiding Citizen, the Point Break remake. So he's got a thing for remakes and reboots and all that kind of stuff. The Children of the Corn that just dropped, the boy preacher is replaced with a girl. I get it, it's PC culture, but just the poster they dropped alone just looked so fucking photoshopped and just terrible. And I remember posting it in the Cinemaniacs group, shout out to them, and everybody was like, yo, this looks like a fan poster that somebody just photoshopped in 2 seconds. And I'm like, yeah, man, this is bad. If you're not even trying to, take me back to the days where movie posters got us excited as shit. Nowadays, I think they just do, they stick with simplicity, and it's just like, oh, well, it's a Children of Corn movie, man. They're going to flock to the TVs and streaming services regardless, right? Right? But then they got to take a step back and realize who they fucking with. Y'all have fucked us over with this series for way too long. You know what I think it's time for? I think it's time for Stephen King to vouch for, like he's been vouching for Dark Tower and The Stand and It Chapter 1, Chapter 2. It's the Stephen King remake renaissance. I think it's time for the man himself to vouch for a true Children of the Corn remake. I would even be cool if they conform to and y'all know I don't like when people conform to trends, but I would be cool. This is a case where I'd be cool if they conform to the trend of direct sequels. Now, I know we've had a direct sequel pretty much in Children of the Corn 6. That was a direct sequel to the first one. But what if they did another one? What if they did or did not bring John Franklin back? And what if they did a direct sequel to part 2? I would be cool with either or, but either a direct sequel or a remake is time, man, because this series, this is not one of those series like Puppet Master or Leprechaun that I feel like they should just not make any more of these fucking movies. Fuck a remake or any of that stuff. They should just let it die. This is not a series I would say that, because people love creepy kids. They love Brom, and they love Insidious and Sinister. They love The Orphan and all that type of stuff. They love movies with creepy ass kids. That is a big ass market in horror right now. And even in art house horror films. I just recently, y'all can check my commentary out for Hereditary. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. It's a well-made film, but that little girl is creepy as fuck in that movie, and she's not even murderous. She actually dies, spoiler alert, in that movie. But, even in art house horror films, creepy kids sell right now. They are on the block. So they need to jump on this wave. If they want to save the Children of the Corn brand overall, the series, if you want to salvage anything that's left from this series, I'm telling y'all, reboot this shit the right way. Give it a theatrical release, put some TLC up into this bitch, and really take the time out to make a creepy, take notes from what they did with It. You know what I'm saying? It is the first, miniseries was a movie. I didn't know they could improve on that, like when I was a kid, but even as an adult, it's like the special effects are so dated. The visual effects rather are so dated, but I still love both Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of that miniseries, man. I love it. The one where they're adults more so than when they're kids. But what Andy Muschietti did with the new It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 as a Stephen King adaptation, I think he did an amazing job, man. You could hire somebody like that to helm, because obviously he does well with writing child characters. So who's to say this guy couldn't jump on board for another Stephen King property and, turn that child writing narrative on its ear and make these murderous Children of the Corn, man. I think that's the way to go. I say a reboot more than a direct sequel, because a direct sequel, there are certain liberties you probably can't take, and you have to tread a little more lightly than you would with just a straightforward reboot. A reboot, you can kind of go back to the drawing board and, you can take way more liberties. There's certain things you can pull off with a reboot as opposed to a direct sequel. But Children of Corn overall is a series, like I said, it's all over the goddamn place, and you know it's really got some bad apples. I feel like the series overall, and as much as I like a lot of these sequels, the movie series overall has way more misses than it does hits, man. It's more all over the place than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series is, man. And that's a tough act to follow, because that series doesn't really have any continuity at all, unless you count maybe 1, 2, and 3. But you never know, man. I really hope they can get it together, because it's a property that you can do so much with, man. You could literally make a trilogy out of this, and who knows, if the trilogy is fire and you've got consistency and you've got things that just jump out at people and just catch them by storm, then you could easily turn this into something amazing again, man. Because I feel like it really hasn't had quality since Children of the Corn 2, and that's not just because that's my favorite. Yeah, it's because it's my favorite entry. Let me not even lie. It's because that's my favorite entry in the franchise. You have to. 2 will always be the hardest act to follow for me, hands down. But we survived the Gatlin massacre, people. I definitely need some more coffee, because I didn't know we were going to be 1 minute or not 1 minute. God damn, y'all can tell I'm being run ragged by talking about this. These crazy ass chillins out here, man. But I didn't know we were going to be an hour and 14 minutes into this, but well worth it, man. Y'all know I'm going to be tagging Charlize Theron and Ryan Baldwin and Naomi Watts and anybody, Eva Mendes, everybody. And I'm sorry if they not going to see my tag on this, but if y'all see my tag, and if y'all are ashamed of y'all roles in this movie, I apologize, but appreciate the fact that people like me appreciate y'all humble beginnings in these films, man. I appreciate it, man. I really do. It's good going back on these films, just horror films in general, and seeing these big name celebrities in there. I love it so much. But people, I need some more coffee, and y'all already know what y'all need. Y'all know what y'all need, and I shouldn't have to remind y'all. But just in the case that I do, and I know it's Friday and everything, I know everyone's got shit to do and stuff like that, as we all do. But what y'all need to do, and what y'all already need to know, is that y'all can follow the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Breaker, and Radio Public. Shout out to Anchor. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, Romero Tudor. Shout out to the Facebook movie group, the Cinemaniacs. Happy Friday to y'all. Hope y'all have an amazing day, night, whatever. Stay out of trouble. And last but not least, shout out to the Tudor reviewers, the listeners, the lovers, the supporters out there. Y'all already know y'all are killing it in the game, man. Listen, man, I see everything. I see y'all tuning in. I even went back this morning and looked at the older episodes, and y'all are still tuning into those, man. And I'm surprised, because I didn't have there's a certain level of confidence that I still kind of don't have with this podcast and shit. But back then it was like I had way more nervousness in my episodes, man. And the fact that y'all are tuning into the earlier episodes is awesome. It's amazing, man. I appreciate the fuck out of y'all, man. I really do. And y'all already know the love and support that y'all show me, man. I show it back to y'all tenfold and then some. So that being said, people, yours truly, Romero Tudor. Another episode of Tudor Reviews in the can. I'll check y'all on the next one.